I will now call this meeting to order. Our first order of business is to adopt tonight's agenda. Commissioners, is there a motion to adopt the final agenda?
So moved.
I'll second.
I got a motion made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Our next order of business is to adopt the minutes from our January 2nd, 2024 Planning Commission meeting. Commissioners, is there a motion to approve the minutes?
Motion to approve the minutes.
A motion, a second?
Second.
A motion made and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. The motion carries. We'll now move on to our discussion items. Our first item for discussion this evening is item 3.1, Hometown Bank Commercial Development Sketch Plat. Sketch plat review is the initial stage of the review that the Planning Commission reviews and considers regarding the development process proposal. There are no formal actions or recommendations taken by the Planning Commission at the time of the sketch plat. The sketch plat review process is intended for the applicant to receive initial feedback from the Planning Commission and the City Council in advance for necessary preliminary plat and rezoning applications. I will now turn it over to our Community and Economic Development Director, Jen Brewington, for the staff presentation.
Thank you, Chair. Tonight we have a sketch plat from Headwaters Development for Hometown Bank. So the applicant has applied for a sketch plat, a request that may ring a bell for you. This project did go under review in 2021. And as is usual with sketch plat requests, there's no approvals or actions that will be taken tonight. The purpose of this process is just solely to get feedback for the developer. The project is proposed on a 4-acre parcel adjacent to Highway 5. The site is near the fire station, downtown Victoria, several residential properties, and a parcel owned by the Minnehaha Creek Watershed District. The envisioned uses for this location include a 1.5-story coffee shop and bank, along with plans for future 2-story office or medical building. The land is presently unoccupied, featuring different elements like grassy areas, rolling hills, wetlands that extend along certain borders, as indicated by the yellow and purple sections on your screen. The property is designated for a blend of low density and right-of-way in the 2040 Comprehensive Plan. The applicant is suggesting an amendment to modify the future land use designation to downtown mixed use, permitting smaller scale retail or office buildings. The downtown mixed use district is also intended to improve on the comfort and safe environment for pedestrians and cyclists with strong links to trails amenities. The amendment will be required to change the future land use guidance on the future land use map as well. The current zoning for the property is R1 low density residential, and the applicants are suggesting a rezoning to the central business district with a PUD. The central business district permits drive-in establishments with the conditional use permit, and offices or clinics are also allowed uses. So on your screen here is the submitted site plan. So we're going to start on your left by looking at the bank and coffee shop located on the south of the site. There will be a looped access onto Highway 5 featuring a right in and right out, and a drive-through that loops around the site for the coffee and bank drive-throughs. The project also suggests a on-site parking with possible connection to Phase 2 on the north side, which we'll talk about in a bit here. So Phase 2 is designated for medical or office purposes. That includes plans for underground parking in a 2-story structure. The occupant for the space has not yet been determined for that Phase 2, but there is sufficient parking proposed to accommodate either medical or office use. Here are some architectural images illustrating the outside and the inside of the bank and the coffee shop. And as you can see, the design includes plenty of natural stone and modern features throughout the building. So for the conditional use permit, so drive-throughs in the central business district do require a conditional use permit subject to 3 conditions. So no structure, driveway, or parking area can be within 100 feet of a residential property, a requirement not met by the drive aisle for the drive-throughs. Each site should possess 150 feet of road frontage and 2 access points, while the proposed site only includes 1 access point. Parking areas are mandated to have a landscape environment and a stipulation that will be scrutinized further with the landscape plan during the preliminary phase. So for parking, the parking requirements are detailed here for the bank, restaurant without liquor, and the office and medical use. The bank is one space short, and the restaurant has requested a PUD to cut their required parking in half. When I say restaurant, I'm meaning the coffee shop portion. Although the medical and office building does meet the parking requirement, the proposed 26-foot wide drive aisles fall below the zoning code's 27-foot requirement. As previously mentioned, a landscape plan will be necessary for the future. It is expected that the boulevard trees are spaced every 35 feet, situated 20 feet from intersections. Foundation plantings are also intended to enhance the pedestrian experience, incorporating boulevard trees, planter boxes, plaza spaces, and green areas near the building. And there are no buffer open space requirements within the, there are no buffer or open space requirements for this project. So the Shoreland Overlay District, it does not lie in that, so therefore they're exempt from the DNR review for this process. Parkland dedication. The Parks and Recreation Committee examined the sketch plat on December 18th and did suggest a cash dedication instead of land, amounting to just about $21,000. And the committee also provided feedback on the absence of a trail or pedestrian connections. And I am going to pass this on to our city engineer, Kara.
Good evening. I don't feel I've been here in a while, so hello. I just have a couple of slides I'm going to touch on here. So when this sketch plat was reviewed back in 2021, there was a lot of discussion at that time around planned access to the site, with the developer requesting that a roundabout be considered for incorporation into the Arboretum Area Transportation Plan. So the developer put their efforts on pause. The city, with funding from the developer and with work with the county and MnDOT, ended up evaluating intersection improvements in this location for a roundabout at Commercial, and then also the effects of that change on 80th Street. And through that process, the council did recommend incorporating a roundabout at this location into the Highway 5 improvement project. So that project, overall big Highway 5 project, is in process. Design is underway for that. Design specific to this roundabout has started. The team from the design firm working on the roundabout and the project team for Hometown Bank we've been in joint meetings together and communicating to plan for the right-of-way needs for that future roundabout. So if the bank site were to move forward and open before the Highway 5 projects are completed, they would only be allowed a right-in, right-only, but the intent is to have these projects working in conjunction. So design's in process. The specific construction timing for the roundabout isn't known yet. It's part of the Big 5 and Rolling Acres Road project, which is slated to occur between 25 and 2027. It's a huge project in a huge area. So when this specific roundabout would be phased within that overall project, we don't have that phasing dialed in yet. We'll know more in the next couple of months. The overall 5 project is 74% funded. So the project team's confident that we'll end up with the funding that we need associated with this roundabout. That was another piece that was discussed at length. So those big questions from a year ago are getting resolved and moving ahead and not seeming to be an issue for the project moving forward. Grading and stormwater management, as noted, they have to meet watershed district rules. There's 2 things that I just wanted to note specifically for this site. The wetlands and wetland buffers that are adjacent to the site do need to be located on outlots that are deeded to the city. What's a little bit unique here is that typically when you're looking at residential subdivisions, we require the stormwater management features for those residential subdivisions to be in outlots deeded to the city. We're not proposing to do that here in this case because this is really a standalone commercial development. So we would expect that that landowner be responsible for the maintenance of the stormwater features that really only serve their drive lanes and parking lot. So they would need to have drainage and utility easements over that, and the watershed district would require a maintenance agreement that we would be able to have access to ensure that they get properly maintained, but we wouldn't take on that responsibility for the city. It's just different because there isn't any public roads draining to it. And then lastly, next slide, there is sewer and water available to the site. These are the notes that were in the staff report that were provided to them, that's a little bit detaily. But when we extended sewer and water along Highway 5 a number of years ago, we put in stubs to serve this property should it develop at some time. So those pieces are there.
All right, on December 19th, we did host a neighborhood meeting. About 5 residents showed up. Some of the main concerns were sightlines, wetland preservation, and having commercial uses adjacent to residential properties. So some of the deviations, so in summary, the applicant does not have a plan for any sidewalks or trails along the roadway.
I forgot something. So I just learned that the Park and Rec Committee had discussed the lack of connections. So one of the new pieces of information that we have from working through the design process is that the proposed roundabout will include pedestrian connections all the way around it. So the city is looking at having that project include a sidewalk connection back to 80th Street up to the roundabout, as well as figuring out the timing to construct the sidewalk that would be on the opposite side of the street, running in front of Cabin Fever and the existing bank up to Quamaclet. So I would expect that staff, and these conversations have been occurring with their engineer, that they would want to have connectivity to those sidewalks that are proposed with the roundabout for their patrons. 'Cause certainly you could see people wanting to walk to the coffee shop, most certainly. So, sorry, I forgot that.
That's great, thank you. Just another note, PUD is requested to have the parking requirements for the coffee and the bank site, and then the 0-foot lot frontage requirement is not met, and the conditions for a CUP for drive-throughs are not fulfilled either. And as previously stated, there's no immediate action tonight, just for discussion. So there are some notes on your screen that the commission can discuss. And the applicant is here today in the audience, and staff is also available for any questions you may have. And that's all I have, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Jen. Does the applicant wish to speak tonight?
Howdy. My name is Mike Hogberg, Managing Director at Headwaters Development, and we're the group that's been assisting Hometown Bank, as well as some other potential users for the medical office site, to really help lay out this piece of property in a way that meets a lot of the objectives of the user. But probably a little more importantly is, given where this site does lay out in proximity to residential and some of the complicated restrictions with wetlands and all of those associated with the roundabout, trying to really come up with a creative solution to a complicated site. And we think that we've made a really big stride in that right direction. And since we had submitted this application, we have gotten a lot of feedback, not only from yourself and your advisors, but also from the state, and have been able to start relaying out the site to accomplish a lot of those objectives. So a lot of the things that are mentioned here, we've already addressed. There are some things that are a little complicated that I'd like to review quickly with you guys and get that initial feedback. But we feel like we're going to be able to accomplish most of those items that fit within the contemplated downtown district and some of the other items that we're talking about. We did get a lot of very direct feedback from the neighborhood meeting, which we thought was helpful. We were able to communicate directly with those neighbors and talk about our process of how we considered this site, which includes a lot of different elevation changes, proximity to their backyards, proximity to their homes, and what their visuals will be. And we think with this design and the offset of the elevation and some retaining walls and unique use of landscaping, that we'll be able to address a lot of their concerns with kind of traffic, headlights, and those types of things. It's not going to be perfect, but with those considerations, we think we'll minimize a lot of the visual impacts that they're concerned about. And we think this is just a good use for that piece of property right off of 5. versus the original considered residential. So happy to answer any questions that you guys may have. I know this has been a project that's been out there for quite some time. There has been a lot of evolution of the design to try to address a lot of the concerns, and we think we're getting pretty close. That's why.
Thank you.
Okay.
I will now open the floor for anybody public in the audience that would like to make a comment. Hearing none, I will now open the floor for the Planning Commission to discuss. Commissioners, do you have any questions or comments? Well, I can say from your first rendition, you had 3 buildings going in there, if I remember right. There was like a daycare or something along with the medical. So I think this makes it a little less crowded for you. My one question would be like parking lot lighting, night lighting. I know we have to have it, but how will that affect the neighbors? Would probably be a big concern. To try to keep it lit, but not overlit. Do you think both buildings will be built at the same time, or will they go in 2 different phases?
Do you want to come back to that? This, as we sit here today, we're likely going to be phased with the bank first and then the medical office shortly thereafter. There is a scenario that maybe they go up at the same time, but right now the best information we have, it will be phased 1 and phase 2.
I think our initial view that we had on the project when it was first addressed some time ago, and, you know, it is in fact a very attractive project, and it's a good utilization, certainly of that piece of ground. But at that point also, one of the considerations, one of the glitches in the whole thing was the neighborhood. And that's you know, if we don't have good neighbors, then everyone has problems. So, you know, I think that when I would look at it, the solution is, so what will it take? What will it take and in terms of lighting, you know, 24-hour a day lighting, or, you know, whatever evening hour lighting that there will be, and addressing that, and the traffic and you know, buffering from the development itself. But it's a you know, I think my initial view then was, so how do we make this work? You know, I mean, we're here to make things happen, and what is it going to take to make this work?
And I'll just to respond to that directly. We have not done the full electrical layout of all but we have a general idea of that and visual sight lines as it relates to landscaping to address a lot of those concerns, especially that we heard directly from the neighbors.
Yep.
There are some different techniques we can use with directional downlighting, different times of days, different sensors, those types of things to really study that site and kind of how the lumens affect the surrounding area. And as long as we meet those minimum requirements, there are a lot of different techniques we can use to minimize or even eliminate a lot of that concern with that lighting.
Yeah, you know, because now is the only time to address that. I mean, if it's not accomplished at this point, it'll be too late. So, so that would seem as though you have some things that you can utilize for that.
Yeah, and we can do those, as we go to the next part of the process, we can show a lot of those lighting studies too, to show the different options we have. And there's a lot of good techniques you can use to address those concerns, because it's a very common concern, these types of developments. And so there's a lot of neat products out there.
And I also think for the neighborhood, quite frankly, that that a maximum number of that are affected, you know, understand, here's what's going to happen. Here's how this is going to look. Here's how this is going to impact you. And I think that that's key to, for us as a planning commission, and certainly for the city, that we keep the maximum number happy.
I couldn't agree more. Yeah. And another thing we can do in those studies too, to help kind of show that visualization, is to show a lot of those sight lines too, as we continue to design the elevation of the site, the roof lines, and take them from perspectives of neighbors and Highway 5 and the visuals that you'll see, so you can really start to articulate what that'll look like.
But the original glitch on the project certainly was the roundabout. And so that's, that was eliminated to make this work. So that's good news.
What were some of the other things that you addressed with the neighboring residents? And you said you wanted to present us a few things that you'd done and changed the plan to just.
Yeah, and so one of the biggest things was sight lines and light, not only from street and parking lights, but car lights at certain times of day. And what we worked through when we showed them the plan, where we had some elevations on there, which I understand is only two-dimensional, so we had to kind of really articulate what that looked like. And for the most part of how the drive lanes are currently designed, is those lights, for the most part, dead end into a retaining wall. So a lot of it is blocked that way. And then we will have a lot of landscaping around those berms and on top, that as you look out the backyards of those homes, you really aren't going to be able to see down into there, and it blocks a lot of that lighting. And that was their biggest concern, is that would be too close to their house. There were the general concerns about just development and change, you know, that they were told those were always going to be wetlands down there and nothing was ever going to change. And that's tough to address. I don't know, 30 years ago, whatever the real estate agent told them is difficult to address, other than to show that we are trying to be responsible about it and take their concerns into account as we finalize the design.
What were the traffic and noise questions?
There wasn't really a lot based on traffic and noise, and the hours of operation here are fairly standard. You're going to get a little bit of traffic in that morning coffee rush, but there was not a lot of questions around that.
What was the planning, the feedback, Jen and Cara, on the drive-through piece of it? Is there any thoughts on that?
I believe the biggest concern that we're actually working through right now is just the stacking component. And we are working with the applicant on that piece right now, moving forward. That's
So
the
it
only-
doesn't create something out back to 5?
Right.
Well, yeah, that and I just like the complications that I think you all have seen in this design is we did every effort we could to not touch the wetlands, satisfy the buffers through the entire site, which we did. So we do not enter the buffers, we don't hit the wetlands at all. And then the final updated design of the roundabout challenged us a little further. That's the way they did present it, that they shifted it a hair north, or I guess it would be east. We really wanted it to shift a little west, and so we're working through that right now. As a result of that, as it pinched the ability to stack even more cars. So we're working through a couple alternatives on that to make sure we're comfortable that there's enough space so that it's safe in that whole circulation and not blocking pedestrians or parking.
Yeah, we want to make sure that the internal circulation works well too, right? So we've connected with our fire and public works and engineering and all of that, on all those pieces.
What is your number of cars you think you could stack?
Right now, so our original design, we were at 18 that we could stack. Right now, we're somewhere between 10 and 14. So we're trying to, without impeding on I guess you call it the right of ways of the roundabout, that we're, trying to maximize what that looks like.
I know in the first iteration, it was brought forward as Hometown and Mocha-Monkey. Is that still the contemplation?
Yes.
And then contemplation, what the hours for Mocha-Monkey and their drive-through location in your Waconia store are 5 to 3, 6 to 3? What are their hours?
Have to look that up quick.
I'm just thinking of the AM time and how much time that the light would be a concern from the headlights versus the lighting from, I agree with you. You can accommodate the back of the property through bollard lights on the sidewalks and things that are at hip height and not, shining in people's
That
windows.
retaining wall there is fairly sizable too.
Yeah,
Around that edge, that'll be.
I think that the residents will be happily surprised at how unencumbered they can be by lighting if it's done properly.
I'm glad you just mentioned that while I was looking at it. A lot of the folks that came in thought the site was going to be elevated up to kind of the level of the firehouse, and which we showed them that differential, that it's actually going down, not up. And I think that gave them a lot of comfort to your point right there. They didn't realize that.
I think yes. 7 to 7? Okay, so it will be definitely daylight hours. I know initially the owner of Mocha-Monkey came to the first presentation, and probably that may be where this answer lies. But one of my questions on the request to have less parking for that component drives probably from the ratio of drive-through revenue versus in-store revenue. Do we have those ratios for Waconia?
We get what he's comfortable sharing on that to kind of understand.
I
that
mean,
ratio, but
I'm
it's-
looking for 70-30, not detailed information. I would guess that it is. Okay, that would have been I've been in Waconia and I've never seen more than 2 cars, so I'm not as concerned about the drive-through line, although this is a passage thoroughfare that will get more traffic, I'm sure, than they do there, but.
Yeah, and that is,
Yeah.
we're working through that with John right now on that stacking, and hey, are you guys comfortable with it operationally?
So in instances where drive-through have stacking issues, typically what they do is they take an order and put them into a drive-through parking wait lane. So has that been contemplated? Like, okay, we'll let you wait here?
Not yet. We can look at that. It's just where, so far how the building sits and then the ability
Too
to
far away?
exit, it gets pretty challenging there. We think there's a better solution going the other way to allow more stacking without that need.
I think that's just something I would think about, because knowing that your busiest time is probably going to be that, obviously, the early morning rush. So if at that time there's a way to,
The challenging part right there too is, I don't have the detailed site in front of me, but there's a piece of the wetland that bumps out right there, so we're not allowed to push
park.
over into parking. So we are looking at all options right now. We have not come up with a final solution, but we'll keep working with staff and the operator to make sure we figure it out one way or another.
yeah, I think I'm less concerned about that parking requirement only because of the drive-through element, because I do feel like you will find that most people, particularly in weather like we have now, not want to get out of their cars for part of the year. And it'd be nice for just knowledge of the developer to really look at those numbers and ratios for Mocha-Monkey and really understand, like at the height of summer, how many people are you having that would be outside, maybe in outdoor seating, or, like, what are we looking at? Because this is a busier, like, thoroughfare community than what Waconia would be, I think. And so we will probably have a little bit more traffic and probably be used more. So I think you just want to kind of keep that into mind. And I know a lot of the inside bank customers are the customers for Mocha-Monkey, so they probably duplicate where we're not really looking at that here, but they likely I go to do my deposit and then I get a coffee. So I only need one parking place, although I'm utilizing 2 businesses kind of thing. So I think that makes me a lot more comfortable with those numbers. I think I would recommend really working with the residents and making sure that they understand the lighting plan, especially those 2 or 3 that are really affected in the back, and that they've looked at it and seen it and understand it, and you're really listening to them, because even when the lumens say they need to be this, If they're shining right in your window, it's not good,
Yep.
regardless of the number. So that would be my recommendation, but I'd be happy to have this in Victoria. I think it'd be nice to have a little bit more commercial.
When, on the topic of stacking, again, and it's my understanding that the Chick-fil-A in Chanhassen, that they had to completely redesign. Are you familiar with that?
Not their design process, but I'm familiar with that area, and it's very challenging. They
Yeah,
put a
it-
little too much in one spot.
Yeah, it was just literal outrage with the stacking and whatever the design features are. You know, it's cheaper to do it right the first time.
They changed their stacking because they have a mobile through lane. That was the main reason for that change. So the only thing I would think about is if you do have mobile ordering availability, that you might want that second pass-through lane. That's
And that's a good solution.
That's how they changed it, yeah. And then they merged those two lanes together as they go through anyway. And opened up their doors so their people can walk out, which is always a good idea.
All right. I looked at my notes from the last time we went through this, and this is a sketch plat review, so this is like ideas and things of that nature. In this presentation and in the packet information, it's referred to as a drive-in and drive-through both. And I think it's just a drive-through versus a drive-in, and I don't know if there's a legal differentiator within our city ordinances for drive-throughs and drive-ins, but drive-ins, you pull your car up, you sit there, wait, eat in your car, or leave, or whatever. Drive-through, you just go through. You know, we addressed the elevation changes and the possibility of using foam down near the wetlands. It sounds like you guys aren't going to touch the wetlands, so people don't really need to be worried too much about that. Question for you guys, how many residents are affected by the possible lighting or noise? I mean, did you send out 150 invitations, or was it like 12?
So I think we did the 350 or 400 feet requirement, so we hit all of those neighbors right contiguous to the property. And
Gotcha.
then across 5 as well. The most immediate, I think it's 3 resident, like right next to the firehouse, and then
Yeah.
it does wrap around, but as it wraps around, it gets further and further out because of the wetlands.
Yeah.
But I think as we do study the lighting and study the traffic pattern there, we'll still look at that far, you know, even though they are farther set back,
Yeah.
it's good to know how far that light will go.
To me, it just didn't seem like there are that many that could be affected by it, 3 or 4, so kind of focus on those. Sounds like we addressed the sidewalks and the roundabout, because I thought this thing was dead without the roundabout. If I have any concerns at this point, what's the plan with the fire station? I mean, is that, I know it's moving 3 years from now or 2 years from now, but potential stacking situations with an emergency still kind of could happen if we don't have enough space within the property. Is there any plan as to what's going to happen to the fire station / water treatment place once we do open the new fire station?
Sure. So we are trying to make sure that that was part of the opportunity that was created with being able to implement the roundabout at commercial. And just to sidebar slightly, you know, potentially long-term tower ends up tying into commercial, so then we have additional connectivity into downtown. That became more possible with the notion of the fire station moving, because we didn't want to have to send fire trucks through the roundabout. So they're scheduled to move in advance of when this construction would occur. But the building will remain a city function, so it'll continue to have building department and then public works operations. There's water treatment plant there, so it'll still have a municipal function, but just not emergency vehicles there.
Thank you. There was also discussion about a water tank that's underneath the parking lot and back, along with a bunch of pipes and technology and stuff. That's not going to be affected by any of these retaining walls and things like that that are being put into place. My only other comment that I wanted to get back in place was last time there was a lot of discussion from the business owners across the street where a right-in, right-out kind of blocks access to Cabin Fever and some of the other places potentially. Is that still the case? I mean, basically, the owner said, you know, people come in heading east and they take a left into our lot and come in and buy all these goods and services. How are they gonna be able to do that now without going down into the gas station and coming back around?
Yeah, so with the roundabout improvements, we are able to maintain the Cabin Fever access as it is today. And through the detailed design, we're working to make sure that we aren't negatively affecting the gas station property there with any of the impacts. So we're still in the design phase, but it looks like everything's coming together consistent with those goals that the council set for not negatively impacting those businesses
Yeah.
or a new business.
So I just wanna make sure that they're, again, it's been 2 years since we've gone through this, that their concerns are still addressed and being considered, which I assume they were, but best to get it on public record. Other than that, you know, I'm, for the most part, in favor of it. I think it's a good addition. I think it adds a nice aspect of coming in across, or coming into the city of Victoria, so. Get past the Minnehaha Creek Watershed District, and I think you're good to go.
And I feel like we're in pretty good shape with them right now.
Good.
We've spent a lot of time with them to get it right.
Are you still thinking the third business on the property
No.
to be daycare?
No, there's not a third option.
Good.
Yeah,
That was my main concern the
It
first
didn't
time.
work with the wetlands, first of all.
Well, the
That
300
too.
cars in and out a day would have made a huge traffic dilemma, so I'm glad to see that's not gonna be.
Kara, would there be an opportunity to add like a merge lane in and out to extend, widen? So like an acceleration lane, deceleration lane,
With the right-in, right-out, or with the roundabout?
both?
So I'm hoping, and we haven't had this conversation, but I'm hoping the timing works out beautifully, that the roundabout's moving ahead concurrent, and we don't have to try to implement the right-in, right-out in advance of the roundabout construction to sort through those traffic challenges. But yeah, so the 5 improvements, we're still working on figuring out where the 4-lane drops. So more details to come as we get closer to providing another update to the Planning Commission and City Council about the Big 5 job, about what the lane configurations are through there. One of the requirements that the county had in terms of bringing funding to the table for this now is that whatever we're constructing there works for the long-term 4-lane. So we're working to kind of figure out the stop and start points for that and what those turn lane configurations look like. So that was a long way to say we're working on it.
And if I can add to that too, we are studying the right-in, right-out just in case the timing doesn't work. But the benefit of getting the current design on the roundabout is we can hopefully design that right-in, right-out that has the least amount of impact when the roundabout does come in. So we try to design with it, but we don't have the answers yet. We're working on it.
That's good.
I'm glad to see there's some idea and plan for sidewalks, trails, and access, because I think that would be huge for all businesses that are in that spot. Just with the people on the south side of 5, they don't have to cross over to go to that side of town. They can walk, bike, I don't know, take some form of transportation, these e-bikes down into your spot and
Yep.
take care of things. So glad to see that. So, I don't have anything else.
And a couple of final points. I think probably it was addressed before I was part of the commission, but the initial discussion on the rezoning of this from residential to commercial and the long-term plan, why it was initially thought to be residential, and that debate on turning it commercial. Is there any salient points on that changeover, or why? I mean, it looks like, to me, when you look at it, it looks like it is kind of a part of the commercial area, but maybe it's because of the residential that was around it originally, or do you have any comment on that?
I don't know that I remember anything, but I'm looking at you guys to see, since I'm not the planner and you weren't the planner at the time.
I was gonna say Monica would know.
So what was really talked about was that, I think Marty was still here then, was that when this originally was contemplated, it's just a really difficult site. So it really was, like, they weren't really sure how to give access for commercial space. MnDOT never wanted to see a traffic light there, and I think a roundabout just hadn't been contemplated, and they knew that a traffic light wasn't gonna be able to go there. So that's why they did the residential housing. But then when we spoke about it 2 years ago, they said, you know, you don't really want people leaving their house and turning onto the Wild West that is that part of 5. So that's when the roundabout and that safety came into the conversation.
Can I get your name?
My name is Monica MacDonald. I work for Hometown Bank, and I'm also a Victoria resident. So,
Thank you, that's
Yeah.
helpful.
Yeah, I think it comes
Is
back,
there-
sorry. I was just gonna add on, I think it comes back to the plan that they put together every 10 years. They go through it and it's like, looks like residential, because that's,
Right.
you know, that was what they had for information up to that point in time, which we know planning is everything we know up to yesterday. And so when something like this comes along, it's like, wait a minute, this probably should be changed.
Yeah,
But there's no reason to change it until it's totally kind of approved and gone through the process.
right.
That'd be my take on it. Anyway, sorry.
I would just add this whole access piece of the puzzle is jarring back to my brain too, because there isn't really great access to the site, and with the roundabout now being contemplated and discussed, it just creates a new opportunity that wasn't there. And then you just couple it with how small the site is. I recall when Marty and Isaac were looking at it, it was like, well, how many houses could you even fit there? By the time you'd have to put in a public cul-de-sac, and then you've got houses backing up to 5.
Can you pull that map back up? What other land is left on the sides of that are still residential?
Everything that's undeveloped around it is wetland.
Really wetland.
Yeah. So like,
Right, to the east.
yeah, that's wetland owned by the watershed district.
Yeah.
They did a big wetland restoration project there a number of years ago, and then it's houses in the fire station.
And you don't see any issue getting it through the Met Council?
No issues. And we don't need to make up that density anywhere else in the city either. We did chat with them about that.
Yeah,
So that was what concern, but we have no issues.
good presentation, thank you.
Commissioners, hearing no more discussion. This request does not require a formal motion to move on. So thank you for your information this evening. Hopefully we gave you some insight, and I look forward to bringing you on board. Our final item for discussion tonight is item 3.2, public hearing for a conditional use permit, shoreland conditional use permit, and site plan for the Victoria Veterinary Clinic at 1486 Steiger Lake Lane. The public hearing was opened at our last meeting and will continue this evening. I will now turn it over to Associate Planner Will Boucher for our staff presentation. And then I will continue the public hearing for those in the chambers this evening that wish to speak.
Perfect. Thank you, Chair. As you stated, this hearing today is for a conditional use permit for the use of a veterinary clinic at 1486 Lane within the city's central business district. Zoning code section 27-3 for conditional uses allow this use only upon securing a conditional use permit with recommendation from Planning Commission and then approval from City Council. The applicant for this conditional use permit is RAM General Contracting, and they are the applicant on behalf of Dan Mull LLC. The Victoria Veterinary Clinic right now operates at 2160 Arboretum Boulevard, and just with needing additional space and the tight constraint of that property layout, they are looking for 1486 Steiger Lake Lane to grow, to expand their business, and to stay with residents of Victoria. So that's their intentions with this property. All right. So for 1486 Steiger Lake Lane, it is one parcel. It is north of Steiger Lake Lane itself and west of Highway 5. The lot is 0.86 acres. The proposed building addition will be to the east of the existing structure, roughly here. And they're also hoping to have a future accessory building onto the western portion of the city, roughly here where my cursor is scrolling, if it's, yeah, good eyesight if you're seeing that. So the existing conditions, this was previously utilized by a retail store for nutritional health. That business sold nutritional meals and replacement shakes. They have since left the city of Victoria for a new location. To the north of this property here runs the Lake Minnetonka Regional Trail. To the south lies a residential area that include Enke Brewing, and also to the south runs some high-density residential housing. To the west, we actually have a retail business for lawn care irrigation, and to the north, or to the east over here, we have Steiger Lake Lane, and then a retail store as well for vehicles. So for our 2040 comprehensive plan, this property is guided for downtown mixed use. The commercial use for a veterinary clinic, that will actually complement well with this intention. So it is already zoned for downtown mixed use and will be utilized for downtown mixed use. So this will match for our 2040 comprehensive plan. All right. As part of the CUP process, this request will need to meet the regulations for zoning code section 31-10, standards of recommendation for the planning commission. There are 4 standards that this CUP request will need to meet. I'll read them each individually, and then I'll also state staff comment on them as well. For the first one is the establishment, maintenance, or operation of the conditional use will not be detrimental to endanger the public health, safety, morals, comfort, or general welfare. Staff does not feel that a veterinary clinic, this use will be detrimental. We feel that we don't feel there will be any cause for harm from its use in this location. For the second requirement, the proposed use at the particular location requested is necessary or desirable to provide a service or facility which is in the interest of public convenience and will not contribute to the general welfare of the community. The proposed veterinary clinic is consistent by comprehensive plan policy LU-1.2, which support the reinvigoration and development of the downtown as a mixed-use district, including variety of commercial, office, and residential space. So this use is complementing that requirement. The establishment of the conditional use will not impede with the normal orderly development and improvement of the surrounding property for uses permitted in the district. Again, staff does not feel that this is detrimental. We feel like this use will complement the downtown mixed-use area, and we don't feel like it will enable any other use in its vicinity. And then the final requirement for a conditional use permit request for your review is the conditional use shall, in all other respects, conform to the applicable regulations of the district in which it is located. The staff reports state that this area is fulfilled, but getting further information from the applicant, we have found that there are 3 requirements that are not making this applicable, and this is to the design and standards for the CBD district. Those 3 uses, or those 3 conditions that are holding this, are impervious surface requirement, a 0-foot setback for buildings and additions in the CBD, and then the building material itself. I will go into further detail for each of those requirements in the design standards and the design review of this, but I just wanted to let you know that's where staff feels at this moment it's not meeting that 4th requirement. All right, so for the design review, I'll be talking about the building height and impervious surface for the structure and bulk regulations. And then I'll also be talking about the building material designs, materials, facades, color, and the roof design as well. All right, well, just give you an idea of what it is going to look like. This is their certificate of survey right here, and this will be showing the building addition here to the east. This will be utilized for a reception area and a waiting room for residents, hoping to get their animals cured. And then it is also showing the future building accessory structure to the west. They are hoping for that to be utilized for retail space in the future. At the moment, since it's being future and they're hoping to have that further down the line, we don't have exact idea what that is, but the use is going to be retail related. Along with the survey, we're showing 2 parcels or 2 parking lots right here. So that will be beneficial as well, along with on-street parking. We have on-street angle parking in front of the main building, and then to the future accessory structures that are showing parallel parking as well. So that is also complementing our 2018 design standards for Steiger Lake Lane as well. So I will continue. And here is just the exterior view of the proposed addition and the renovation they're looking at. We are showing this is going to be Steiger Lake Lane here, and this is going to be where my cursor is showing the front view of the building, which that is going to be on the eastern side of the proposed project. All right. So just looking over the design review, the bulk standards, the building design and materials, it's going to be compliant with building height. It's coming in at 27.3 inches. So that is going to be acceptable, 27 feet 3 inches. The requirement is anything past 35 feet in the CBD district will require a conditional use permit. This building height is acceptable to our standards, only going to be 1 story. This is where I'm going to talk about the impervious surface and where the requirement is not being met. So without the future accessory structure, this is looking at a 71.22% impervious surface rating. In our CB district and our shoreland overlay regulations, any buildings or commercial use within the CBD is allowed 80% impervious surface. I will now talk where we actually are not meeting this requirement, and that is with the inclusion of the accessory structure. That is bumping it up to 80.97%. That 0.97% isn't detrimental and probably could be looked at and reduced. But because of this, this is an area where I just wanted to state it's not meeting that requirement right now. I also talk about the setback. This building does not meet the standard in relation to Steiger Lake Lane. As part of our CBD design standards, buildings and building additions, where this is where it's come into play, will require 65% of the front facade to be butted up to the road or to a sidewalk. With the little portion here, along with the future accessory building, that's coming in at 54%. So that is going to be about quite a bit less than from the 65% needed on adjacent to Steiger Lake Lane. It is also saying since it's a double frontage lot, just because of how the angle to the road goes, it'll be required for the front facade of the building as well, but that's going to be 100%. So we have no issues with that. But I did want to state that that is an area where we are not meeting the code requirement for the CBD design standards. I also keep talking about the building materials themselves. This is the second area I discussed where we're not meeting the design standard requirement, and that is for the 70% primary materials. In the CB district, we see natural stone as a primary material for a building. This building is looking at around 40% cultured stone, which will be a primary material, and then it'll be looking at 60% for IFAS. That IFAS is seen as an accent material and will require 30%. Per staff meeting, the exterior design does match up with what we see in the CBD district. We don't feel like this is a detrimental change, but again, per zoning standards, we are bringing up for your viewing. So we don't feel it's too detrimental, and we could see this as a condition of approval or design variation. But we did want to speak our mind of staff thoughts to the commission. And then I also talk about the roof design itself. The roof design is still going to be a pitched roof, which was what is existing on the property now. They're just expanding on with the addition. They're looking at an asphalt pitched roof, and that is per code limit. 10,000 square feet or above for a building will require it to be a different material, but since they're not hitting that, they're around 4,000 square feet, asphalt is a permittable choice. The applicants also wanted to state that they're hoping for another option as well if prices allow, for instead of asphalt as shown here to a standing seam metal if prices allow. Talking with the building official on that proposal, he doesn't have too much apprehension with a standing seam. It's a strong material, and if they are allowed to use that material, we as staff wouldn't have too much difficulty with that. All right, I'll talk about parking now. They're looking at providing a total of 54 parking spaces in total for the property. They're having 38 off-street parking stalls, which they're going to be 12 on the eastern portion and then 26 on the western portion. They're looking at as well as 16 on-street parking spaces as well, with 11 going to be this angled styled in front of the main structure and 5 with the parallel style in front of the future accessory building. Required parking for a veterinary clinic with this square footage size they're proposing is needing 34.25. And for the retail use for this accessory structure at 3,600 square feet is 10.8. Altogether, we have a parking surplus of 8.95 spaces. So they only need so much, but they're actually giving 8.95. So did want to point that out with this design. All right, along with the review of the CUP and the site plan, it becomes the signage as well. They're only proposing one signage for this building. It is a 70 square foot wall sign in the front building where the entryway is attached to their building addition on that eastern portion of the property. Per code regulation for wall signs, for the wall itself, the wall area, anything between 601 to 1,200 square feet, it's allowed a maximum wall area between 24 and 84 square feet. They are only proposing one 70-foot square foot sign. That is going to be permissible per code. And again, this lot is going to be within our shoreland overlay district. It's in close proximity to Steiger Lake. As such, we have contacted the DNR 10 days prior about this request, and their only condition of approval for this is going to be receiving a permit of approval from the Minnehaha Creek Watershed District. The applicants have at this time contacted the Minnehaha Creek Watershed District, are in the process of getting that permit. One of the conditions of approval is that they're going to get that and have it approved by the Minnehaha Creek Watershed District. All right. This plan has been reviewed internally by staff at our development review team meetings. It has been reviewed by the fire chief, public works, building, and engineering. The only two that replied with comments about this project was the fire chief and the city engineer. The city engineer had a little bit more comments, so I'll go through those next in the next slide. But the fire chief only commented that this project will need fire sprinkling based on that it's going to be that extra 3,000 square feet. So he's only wanting that extra fire sprinkling in it as well. He also recommended stubbing a water main into that future accessory building as well, just to plan for it in the future. So those were his comments on the project. For the city engineer, she had a little bit more. When this was originally submitted for staff review, there was not any on-street parking or sidewalks with this project. After her comments and from our 2018 city downtown street standard, they have since added parking, they have added on-street, and they have added sidewalk for the majority, if not the entire majority, along Steiger Lake Lane. So they're meeting our requirement for that piece. The original project also had 3 access points for the parking lot. Per city engineer comment, she asked for that reduction in that. The applicants have met that and reduced it to 2 parking access points. She had also asked for the inclusion of curb and gutter. Applicants have also met that with their parking lots and on their sidewalk on Steger Lake Lane. City engineer also asked for a Minnehaha Creek Watershed District permit, but that also matched with the DNR. So we will be having that as a condition of approval to get that permit from them and have it approved. And she also asked for the utilities. This plan shows connecting water subs. Any connections must be completed in accordance with city standards. And for sanitary sewer, this plan shows connecting to the existing sanitary sewer on the property. A low-pressure sanitary sewer stub was provided to the property in 2018, part of the project. Staff recommends that the applicant consider installing a new grinder pump and connecting to the low-pressure sewer in lieu of maintaining the existing sewer facility. She also had comments on the future building as well. The original plan showed that this future building was going to be on top of a storm sewer pipe. She asked for that building to be moved off it. The applicants have done that. And then she also stated the same as the fire chief of connecting utilities out there for future use as well. So, because this is a CUP, this has been published in the city's official newspaper. The Department of Natural Resources was also contacted 10 days prior to the meeting for comment. Property owners within 350 feet of the subject property were notified and invited to participate in this meeting tonight. Staff has received no comment from anyone from the newspaper or anyone in proximity to the building. We have received nothing. And staff again recommends the Planning Commission hold a public hearing on this occurrence since it was tabled at the January 2nd Planning Commission meeting. Here are the recommendations for approval for staff recommendation. At the bottom there, we also say we shall be complying with zoning code section 22-S shoreline district regulations. This is for that second compliant for the impervious surface, saying that as a condition of approval, you'll need to meet these standards. As long as applicants follow the standards staff recommends here, we recommend approval of this UP with the conditions in front of you. And then we have a sample motion. The applicants for RAM are here tonight as well as representatives of the veterinary clinic. So we are open to questions now at this time.
Thank you, Will. Does the applicant wish to speak tonight? I know you said something at the last meeting.
I'm Jamie Chichka, Ram General Contracting. I don't think we have anything specifically to say outside of Will's presentation, other than the fact of the owner is unable to be with us tonight. She does have representation if anyone has any questions in regards to the business. Rolly Radke, CEO of RAM, is also here if there's any questions about the building, the site development. I guess just for a piece of information, the owner very much values being a part of the Victoria community, wanted to make sure to stay within the community, and is excited to move to a different location and the ability to expand and grow her business in the Victoria community. So I think that's everything for us.
All right, thank you.
Yep.
I will now continue the public hearing that we tabled from the January 2nd meeting. Is there anyone in the chambers this evening who wish to comment on this item? Hearing no additional public input, commissioners, may I have a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. The motion carries. The public hearing is closed. I will now open the floor for the Planning Commission to discuss. Commissioners, any questions, comments?
I have a question regarding the positioning of the accessory building and the plan for retail. And I'm guessing, I can almost guess what it is, but is the storm pipe running in the back of the property? Is that why it's pushed up to the street, or why did we push up to the street instead of making, or is it a setback from the back line? Can it not be parallel with the other building, is my question? Obviously, and I'm sure there's a really good answer.
I'll answer the storm pipe first. So the storm pipe is not, it's running adjacent to the building, so that is not the reason that it was pushed up. It's the reason it was pushed away from the side yard line, but I'm sure Will can speak to why it was pushed to the front of the property line because of your 0-foot setback.
Yep. As Kara said, the reason why we had it pushed up was so they could meet that standard. When they first did their submittal, they weren't meeting that 0-foot setback. So moving that accessory structure closer to the property line and then having the parallel parking with it as well is just so they can help them meet that 0-foot and get that 65% requirement for them.
And that's just so that we have throughout downtown that we have building fronts on the road, not parking lots on the road.
That we kind of have that with this building, and then we don't have that with Kelly Green, and then we would have that again, and then we don't have that. So it's not, I mean, it's not consistent at this point, but maybe someday it could be.
Yeah, the years I've been through these downtown, as redevelopment occurs, these folks look to move it to the front.
And the reason the other building wouldn't be at the 0 lot line is because it's grandfathered in because of the existing structure and the renovation of the addition, I'm assuming?
Part of that addition will, it takes away their legal non-conforming status because it is growing upon the building itself. If they didn't have that addition for the building, they wouldn't need to have that requirement, but they would lose their entryway, they'd lose that guest serving room, so they wouldn't be able to have that. So that's why they are forced to have the 65% facade for the building going down Steiger Lake. But we're trying to meet with them right now, and part of the conditions of approval is still meeting the design standards for the CBD district.
And my guess is the ephes and the stone kind of matching the existing building. Is that kind of the idea behind what's been proposed for building elements? Or I know the existing building's not super attractive, but I don't really recall. I think it's ephes or a part of it, but I'm not sure. Someone. Block, okay.
Yes.
So just trying to find something that will.
So the city tasked us and the owner to use building materials that complemented other downtown materials. So the owner very much adores the look of the City Hall building. So we kind of took that approach and thought using a couple of different colors and using kind of the same materials would really complement the whole drive down Steiger Lake Lane. Okay, so one of the other things that the owner did want to bring up is you talk about the sidewalk and the extension down Steiger Lake Lane and specifically to Kelly Green. If we're going to be putting in the sidewalk along the entire front of the property and nothing is going to happen in front of Kelly Green, it definitely defeats the purpose of spending that and putting that sidewalk in front of her property if it's going to be a dead end. So she just wanted to address that with the group and looking for city's advice and comment on that as well. So.
I guess I kind of agree with her, but the other side is, the same way with the parallel parking and that, someday hopefully we will connect the two, maybe sooner, if there is something there to connect to. And to not include it now and to try to add it later would be very detrimental and probably more headache for her down the road. And just that this is the plan that we like to see in the city, and eventually, yes, it will connect. And we have all kinds of dead end trails throughout the city we'd like to connect to. So Unfortunately, that's how development happens and kind of what we need to deal with. Also kind of looking at, I don't know if you have, getting back to my lighting, what your parking lot lighting plan would be, or if it's all built off building. I just, and, you know, for having areas lit at night so that people just don't hang out and cause trouble, is what I'm thinking of, and whether it's just building lighting or what the city would require on that size of lot. And then I did see you got some storm sewer or drains in the parking lot? Is that in one of the plans? Or,
There's an existing storm sewer pipe that discharges through the property, and then, you know, they'll need to meet Minnehaha Creek Watershed District, so they're not in the area that's served by the regional stormwater pond, so, you know, whatever the watershed district requirements are for their site, they'll have to meet on site, and so they're working with them to figure out what that is.
but it looks like on the drawing, there's like 83 linear feet of 12-inch storm sewer
Within it or through it?
through it.
On the left side there?
Yes.
Yeah, so that's an existing pipe that runs through the property that needs to remain in place
And there's a catch basin there.
in the road, and then it flows north to some mystery location.
But there's one in the parking lot. There's a catch basin in the parking lot?
Proposed.
Yes.
So I haven't reviewed these new drawings that are
Oh.
on your screen there, so
This is,
I'll take you at your word.
okay.
Good eye, Chair.
So it looks like there's a couple catch basins in that parking lot that will collect the storm sewer. So, I mean, as far as hard cover, you're kind of collecting it on site and
Yeah, that we'll look at in detail after the watershed district has weighed. With this size site, we'd want them reviewing it first.
Are there any restrictions from Carver Park being right on the other side of the regional trail?
Per the notifications for 350 feet, we had notified them about the meeting tonight. They have not reached out to any of us for recommendations or any conditions about the building here, so we had notified them of the meeting, but we have received nothing from them.
We allowed to talk about like certain other aspects of this tonight, or are we just dealing with like the 80.97% impervious and access points and all that sort of stuff?
I guess, could you elaborate what you mean by that?
Well, we got four things for the CUP or CUD or CUF, whatever we're dealing with. And yeah, so we've got, you know, some of them are close, some of them aren't that close. We're supposed to discuss that. Should we be discussing other things like the Hennepin County Regional Trail is really cool to have that right there, but with all the people running, biking, doing all sorts of funky things on there, and then having 10 sick dogs sitting, you know, in the yard next to it, should we require some sort of fence or other thing to be put up along there? Is that even possible with the Hennepin County Regional Trail? Stuff like that.
Yeah. Per the conditional use permit, we're actually looking at the use of the veterinary clinic itself at this location, so you're more than welcome to be asking questions as this. At the moment, the applicants are not proposing any outside storage of animals. It's going to be a temporary kennel within the facility to keep any overnight pets, but they're not hoping to keep any animals long-term. The portion of the building actually here will be utilized for the temporary kennel. It'll be utilized for laboratory, for examinations room, for the veterinarian's office, for other such uses. That was included within the packet as well that was given out to you. But they're not having or proposing any animals being physically outside for this use. They're hoping to be able to treat the animals within the facility, keep them overnight in the kennel if needed, and then give them back to the pet owners if they can in a timely manner. But we're not expecting any like type of outdoor run area for animals at this location.
Okay, till the retail spot becomes a daycare or something else of that nature. And as a pet owner, when I show up to take my dog out of the car with 3 other people in generally the same timeline and 2 other people coming out, now we've got 4 to 5 dogs / cats that should be leashed, but doesn't always happen. So that's where I'm saying I don't want them to run into some sort of legal issue when some dog runs after the guy going down the trail on his bike.
As part of the conditions of approval, you could put a condition on this to prevent the use of a daycare at that accessory structure in the future, if you would so like, if you want to be able to plan for that wise out.
I guess that was my question. Is that how detailed we want to get tonight, or is that like outside of what we need to deal with tonight?
Well, and I'm imagining that the owner wants to know that they have the authority to build a building in the future to make the land pencil, because with just the one structure, it probably doesn't, is my guess. But the other part is to say this might be some retail structure, but we don't know what. It's kind of putting us in a position where we're approving we don't know what.
Could be a
I don't
Chick-fil-A.
feel real comfortable approving we don't know what.
That was
be
gonna be my
honest.
point.
I'm like, I mean, if I think of it as a retail pet store with food and, you know, I'm not as concerned about the parking but if something else comes in, will we ever get to see it again, is my question. Before I mean, why aren't we doing this in 2 parcels or 2, you know what I mean? Have we ever thought about this approving, you know, the expansion and what we're expecting to be built, or no?
Yeah, I think tonight you're looking at just that building specifically. They just want to know that in the future, they could put a building there. Again, nothing's planned. They don't know what that use is. We would still need to review that from a staff level, and so would you. So I get where you're going with this, Commissioner, but for tonight's purposes, we're looking at just their proposed vet clinic building for that CUP.
And that proposal has no animal lodging aspect to it.
Correct. I do know, and applicant, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but she is looking to do a 24-hour facility at some point. So within the CUP, that actually allows her to do that, to where she doesn't have to come back and go through this process again. City staff feel comfortable with that. We don't have one currently in the community. There's not one really near us, so we see that as a benefit for the community. But we did feel comfortable allowing that use for 24-hour purposes down the road. She's not doing that now, but she just wants to have the ability when she gets more staff, when she's able to do so.
More like an emergency veterinary
Yeah,
service?
yeah,
We need
that's my understanding.
We don't have that.
We don't have that, and it's not going to be any form of kennel. Those are completely different. A kennel versus a vet is completely different. We don't allow that currently in our CBD anyways. We do have a kennel, I believe, on the outskirts of town, but that's a completely different use than what this is.
So digging into some other little tidbits, the land adjacent to the property is the former city
Public Works.
Public Works area. Is there any dumping or reasons to believe that there's anything there that could detrimentally affect the development of this property?
Not that I'm aware of. No. That site will still continue to be used as it is today, for the moment.
I didn't think so, but you never know.
Well, and if you think about it too, this project is starting to spur the redevelopment on this side of town, right? You mentioned the Kelly Green, you mentioned the Public Works building, there's another business at the end of the street that may be looking to redevelop downtown. So this really is just the catalyst of this section being redeveloped right now.
Is any of this parking shared parking?
We have discussed a shared parking agreement with them. We haven't finalized anything yet, but they are definitely open to that, which has been a really great benefit to the community as we continue talking about parking with every development. So yeah, there is an interest in providing that shared parking component, which would be great. Good question. Thank you.
I have a design question on the curved windows. I mean, I'm just looking at our city hall pictures versus that, and, you know, there's many more windows in the city hall, and they're all square. The arch, to me, kind of has a little bit of a religious building feel to it. I'm not a building designer, so take it with a grain of salt, but I was just curious if that was part of the function of the building or just the owner's preference. Got it. And are those evolving, or is this kind of like final what she wants to do? Got it.
We did also do the clock tower edition that has arch windows in it.
Okay.
We also did this, I mean, we're following architectural standards, but I mean, there are other buildings that have arch windows still.
Thank you.
And tonight, we're addressing the main building, we're not addressing the partial B. Is that true?
Yep, that is correct. We're looking at the conditional use of the vet clinic itself at 1486 Steiger Lake Lane.
Yep. Perfect. So if there is an additional building, that will obviously go back through planning commission.
So if we're just looking at the building that will be the veterinary clinic, which parking will be built with that clinic versus the other parking? Because then I think our parking ratios are different, aren't they not?
Yep.
For what I calculated for the retail use of what they've told me, that was looking at the,
That's everything that's not surface now? Is that, because, can we go back to those ratios?
yeah.
That's, so currently, would we even be building, like, I know is that where the current entrance is? The two entrances, are they where they are today? They're not moving?
Roughly, that's where their entrances, I believe, are.
So with the redevelopment of the veterinary clinic, you'd add the adjacent or the connected building and build out the parking in the grass area that would be to the southwest, I guess it would be, or southeast, and then also the diagonal parking in the front. But then would you build, what portion, like is that where your dash line is? Is that where your? Uh-huh. Well, that would be great. Very helpful. I mean, if it's gonna be phased, I guess I'm wondering where the phases end and begin.
Yeah, I'm Rolly Radke. I'm the
Thanks.
one of the owners at RAM. So I guess to answer your question the best I can, it's the idea of what we're running with is, you know, how much parking you gonna make us put in? You know what I mean? It's really, because we set aside the green space for the future building so we could get the zero lot line. Originally, we had the building set back further, but we brought it forward, which allowed us to put more parking behind the future structure. So, you know, when we're looking at, a lot of this all really truly comes down to cost and budget, you know, what she can afford to do too.
For sure.
So, you know, but as far as, we'd have to meet the criteria of what we need for the number, I think it's 34. I think that we have to have for the vet clinic, you know. So when we go into this, depending on some of the stuff that the watershed, you know, comes back with, or, you know, we'll have to kind of see once we get that and with the city engineer, if we have to change anything with parking design, but if it all stays the same, we would like to probably make at least all the improvements right away, you know, but, you know, I don't know if they're gonna make us put in a holding pond or something, like a little place or something, so we have to kind of figure some of that out, so.
And if my memory serves me right, we had asked for them to do this second portion, this lot, for that shared parking purpose to kind of pre-plan, right? Put the parking in first and then build the building down the road. But this would give us the additional parking not only for their current site, but for that shared parking purpose. So we thought, you know, if you're gonna build it in down the road anyways, can you build it sooner than later so we have that extra parking to, you know, help the residents and businesses downtown?
So if the owner, I mean, that's a lot of parking at a lot of expense. I'm
Mm-hmm.
gonna be real, I mean, even surface parking is expensive. And if you think about if this building's not coming for 3 to 4 years, to put that expense up front and to pay for it for the next 4 years before the revenue comes would be kind of a hardship on a business owner, in my opinion. So that's why I was asking, like, it looks like parcel B and the government lot 1, like that is, it's like 34 parking spaces if you took everything over on that side, which would probably be close to your parking requirement. I'm not sure how many cars or how many employees are there at any time, but it seems like it's a lot more than where she is now, and probably with the same amount of employees to start, she'd probably be in pretty good shape.
Yep.
Because I just can't, I mean, it'd be great if somebody could afford to do that, but looking at pro formas and numbers all my life, I'm saying I highly doubt you would take on that expense.
Well,
If you
I
had,
can't
unless
speak
you
for
had
Jessica.
to.
I know her pretty well. I mean, I guess if it makes that, she could put that money towards somewhere else into the building, that's what she'd probably prefer than putting in a parking lot. But, you know, I think we'll meet whatever criteria we have to meet as far as minimums, but, you know, like I said, a lot of it comes down to, you know, the overall where we're gonna end up. We're pretty close right now with the changes we've made. One reason why we kind of asked for the EFS versus the stucco is because we're trying to balance some stuff out here. And things, I mean, we're right, kind of pretty close to, you know, so if we could get by without, originally, we weren't developing that western half, you know, but we had a bigger parking lot, you know, area, but then we kind of started moving stuff around with, you know, so, you know, if she doesn't have to do that, you know, we'll have to figure that out. But yeah, we can always set it up so we can finish it off down the road or something, but, you know, we'll have to make sure drainage and everything else, we gotta make sure that everything works, you know. So. That help?
I don't know, I think I'm like all in on everything east of that first parking lot. Like the building, the design, everything, the angled parking all along, the other parking lot, like what she wants to do right now. But this other mystery is a little bit just daunting, because do you do the parking lot or not? Will it be built or not? Will there be a building there? What will it serve? I know we'd have to see it again, but wouldn't it just be easier to, you know, approve everything east of that parking lot line and get that done, and then let her figure out the rest when it comes time? Is that impossible to do?
No, staff-wise, that wouldn't be possible at all as long as they meet the required parking for the veterinary clinic, which is that 34.25, and if they wanted to, like you're stating, to remove that future accessory structure, and then at a later date, once they're feeling more confident, at that time, we would be reviewing it again, and then whatever use that might be, we'd be looking at the parking requirement for that use. But at the moment, if what you're saying is they wanted to remove that and just look at the use of the veterinary clinic and reduce the parking lot, as long as they're meeting the 34.25 spaces.
I think it's actually a little short, but I think that it's probably approvable.
So just so we understand correctly, the city would benefit if the parking went in first, before the building. And so I think that the city was promoting that.
Yeah, got it.
And I get that because there's a shortage, I don't know from where, only during probably events. Car night.
It's kind of a walk from the other stuff.
Yeah, so I could see that that would benefit there, but without, so the CUP would actually say they could build an accessory building here of 1,200 square foot, or no?
No, that's not within the conditions themselves. Part of the recommendations for the conditions is meeting the design standards for the CUP.
Okay. So the approval would only be for, can we just go to the, I mean, I get that they're saying this is all of this. So the CUP request is actually for both buildings. Am I not correct? No, it's only,
It's for the use of the conditional use for the veterinary clinic at 1486. That's
only, okay.
Only.
So that's all we would be approving? Perfect. That's what I wanted to make sure. So that's all we'll do now.
So will they still meet the frontage setback?
That would still be a requirement, part of the recommendations of the resolution. That'll still have to be met since they're adding on to the addition itself. But that can be a recommendation of approval from the planning commission to work with staff to meet that. Which we are still working on that movement, but if we did go ahead and you recommended approval, they would just need to work with staff before the building design can be approved for the building permit itself.
What if they can't make that approval, then?
Can't meet that approval, then it wouldn't be able to happen, or they have to come back to get an amendment to their CUP that you approved or recommended for approval.
I'm just going to jump in, play planner today. So what I'm hearing is that the planning commission doesn't think we should require the 65% meeting the 10-foot requirement, right?
Yeah.
So you should direct us to work on that before it goes to the city council meeting next week to see if we can work through that.
May I speak to that for just a moment? Is it my understanding that the setback is partially different because of the green space that we're requiring outside the front of the building? One of the things that we would very much like to request is that green space not go away. That is an integral part to the veterinary clinic. An outdoor space for pets to come in. We have to do a lot of different things like catch specimens for our testing. And some pets don't like to come in, as you've mentioned. You know, there are pets that are not happy on leash with other pets inside. So if that is a barrier, that's something that we would request not be changed. That green space is really, really important to us, and maybe that's not something that you're talking about. But I just wanted to make sure that that's spoken of.
So the green space, there's green space on the street side of the business, but there's also green space on the front door side of the business, correct?
I believe,
Isn't that area, but if you look at landscaping, steel edging and oversized river rock is that to the right of your front door parking lot not going to be green space? Am I misunderstanding?
no, I guess my question was, maybe
Or you
I'm
need both?
Incorrect. My question was, if we're not doing the second half of the site, and that changes the percentage of that 65%, and you're going to go back and ask about whether or not we meet that, and we don't because we aren't finishing the second half, I'm requesting that someone potentially advocate that green space stay and that we not have to meet that requirement at this point, because that is an integral part to the veterinary clinic.
Yeah, what I'm hearing the planning commission say is that you're fine with what they have shown, so you would recommend that staff figure out how we eliminate that requirement of
Thank you.
changing that green space to something else when we bring it forward to the city council.
That's correct.
I agree.
I agree with that.
Thank you for the explanation.
And the building is already existing,
Yes.
so we
It's not like
had
they're
some
building a
issue.
whole new
Yes,
structure.
correct. If this was a new structure, this would be a different conversation, I think
you.
we feel internally. So obviously, we want them to stay in the town. We're trying to work with them as best as we can within the CBD.
Yeah, I think I agree with like you said,
Right.
everything to the east of that looks great.
Yeah.
So the only issue is going to be parking, but if you have parking on what would consider the back end,
16.
the front, then the street, pretty close to 34.
I think it's like 34 if you don't take the west side of the entryway. So it's pretty close. And right now,
We had to do some temporary parking on the west side until
on the
they figure out what they want to do with the balance of the site. That would be consistent with things we've done in downtown.
yeah,
Yeah.
I think
Well, it's good utilization of an existing building, and,
for sure.
and there is a market. So it would seem, so,
It's a definite upgrade to the building.
Yes.
Yeah. Cinder block right now.
We have a question when we talk about the parking. Do you have a way that you can pull up the site plan that shows all the parking spaces? I just want to get clarification when we say everything to the east. so that we're all on the same page. Because we have some parking spaces to the west of the building, and then we also have the sidewalk and the parallel parking on the street. That's to the west of the building that I just want to make sure we have cleared up what is to be developed at this point and what is not to. Because if we're not developing any of that parking lot to the west or dealing with that future building right now, I'm not sure that it makes sense to put the sidewalk in and put the parallel parking in.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to make sure that we're on the same page as that. But we probably would want to put the parking in on the west side of the building.
Correct.
For that side of the building.
Yeah.
So,
And maybe what we'd talk about doing is figuring out how to put that in on a temporary basis so that you have the most opportunity with the balance of the site when you're ready to come forward with something.
Yep.
That's when I would envision that would make sense to put the parallel in. So what I kind of picture is before this goes to city council, if we show that part is shaded as future,
phase 1, phase 2 situation.
future, and that future phase has to go back through the city approval process.
Understandable.
So that we can focus just on the vet clinic.
Yep, and we can
Conditional use
alter our
permit.
site plan to reflect that.
Yeah.
I just
And
wanted to
then
make sure
should
before
help
we
with
went
your
ahead.
funding plan.
Understandable. No, much appreciated. Thank you.
Do you want to go back to the motion? So would we change this motion any way? Or should we say phase 1, or just leave it as it is and?
Yeah, the only thing that would probably have to subsequently happen in addition to get to that less building frontage would be a variance. So we'd have to bring a variance forward for that, for the vet clinic.
For the not being right on the zero setback to the sidewalk.
Yep.
65, yeah.
So they'll still have to come back.
That can, it looks like we can bring that to city council with planning commission, including in the notes here today that you were supportive of that.
Okay. Okay, I will make a motion to recommend adopting resolution giving approval of the CUP request by Ram General Contracting for the use of the veterinary clinic at 1486 Steiger Lake Lane with the conditions and findings as proposed by staff and pursuant to the discussions we've had here today.
I'd second that motion.
I have a motion made and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Thank you. The motion carries. That concludes the discussion item for this evening. Looking forward to having you move forward, and hopefully we can get this up and running.
Spend more time with
Moving on to miscellaneous items of our agenda. Are there any miscellaneous items from staff?
None from staff.
Commissioners, do you have any miscellaneous items?
no, sir.
I don't.
The only thing I have is the city is having some workshops coming up to talk about developments, upcoming developments. So pay attention to what is on the calendar for the city, because there's a lot of things happening, and public input is very important. It makes our job a lot easier and staff's job a lot easier. So commissioners, hearing no more items this evening, can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Yeah, motion, can I get a second?
Second.
A motion made and second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. Thank you. We are adjourned.